Kiki presents Sewing a Zipper! Hey Kiki readers, I'm Lindsay and I am super excited to sew a zipper with you today. Maybe you were reading the November-December issue of Kiki and you saw an article on how to sew a zipper, and maybe you just wanted some practice, so you might want to follow along on this video. Well, there are many different kinds of zippers that you could sew. There's invisible zippers and fly zippers and separating zippers and exposed zippers, but we're just going to work with a plain standard zipper. And I don't know about you, but with me, whenever someone talks about garment closures, I always feel like zippers sound the most intimidating. So hopefully after we go over it and you get some practice, they won't seem so scary anymore. And I really encourage you to sew along with this video at home. So when you see the sign of Mowgli and pause come up, you can hit pause on your screen at home and go sew that step, and then come back and press play when you're ready to move on. Sound good? Okay, let's go sew a zipper. So for this video, we're going to sew a zipper into some scrap fabric. That way you can practice a few times before you sew it into your skirt or whatever else you want to put a zipper in. So as you can see here, I have two pieces of scrap fabric that are about the same size, but that are bigger than my zipper, that I have pinned together in preparation to sew. So I'm going to lay my zipper on my pinned pieces of fabric. And do you see I'm pointing to the little metal piece at the end of the zipper? Well, just above that, I marked a little pencil line where that is. So from where the top of the zipper would be to that pencil line, you're going to sew a basting stitch on your sewing machine. And that will be the largest stitch that your machine can do. So probably a size 6, depending on the machine. And then after the pencil mark, you'll switch your stitch back to a normal size stitch. So that pencil mark is very important. So now that I have that marked off, I'm ready to sew the stitches I just mentioned onto my fabric. So go ahead and start sewing on the side that is opposite of where your zipper would be. And just use a regular stitch, and go ahead and back tack like you normally would and stitch forward until you get to the pencil mark, and then you're going to back tack again. And when you stop, just go ahead and manually push your needle into the fabric and leave it there, and then you can adjust your stitch size. So now I bumped up my stitch size to the largest size possible, and I'm going to continue forward on the same line as I was, only my stitch is a lot bigger than it was before. So maybe you can see that right under my pencil line where it's a little bit thicker because I back tack there. But so right before that line is the small stitch, and right after that line is the bigger stitch. And this is just a picture to show you that my metal part of my zipper is lined up with that thick area where I back tack. So this is what it should look like after you sew it. Okay, now it's your turn to catch up at home, so go ahead and press pause on your computer and try to do this step on your own. Go ahead and press play when you're ready for the next step. So the first thing you need to do is press open your seam with an iron so that it is completely flat. But just so you know, it's always a good idea to press open your seams after you sew one. Now go ahead and lay your zipper over the area that we marked off earlier and try to line the zipper part with the center of your seam. So the line in the middle of your seam, try to make that perfectly centered with the zipper part of your zipper. And then you're just going to pin that together. So place some pins around the fabric part of your zipper, making sure that the center of your zipper stays lined up with the center of your seam. Okay, so go ahead and do that part on your own at home now too. So next you're going to need a hand needle and thread, and we're going to hand baste before you machine baste, but we're going to hand baste the zipper in place because you won't be able to sew over those pins. So starting at the top of the zipper, you're going to sew through your fabric and your zipper fabric about 1/4 of an inch away from the center of the seam. And you're going to go down to where that pencil mark was, to where the metal part that stops the zipper is. And just before that part, you're going to cross over the seam line and you're going to go up the other side in the same manner. You want to stop just before that metal part because you don't want that part exposed when you unzip your zipper in your garment. And you can actually sew over the zipper, you just have to be very careful. Okay, so here's what it looks like on the outside and the inside with it basted. I actually use a different colored thread that's obvious to see so that it's easier when I'm sewing over it. So that's why it's a bright yellow thread that I hand sewed with. Okay, your turn to hand sew at home. Okay, in order to sew a zipper, you have to change your sewing machine foot to a zipper foot. And this is going to look different for every machine. For this machine, this is what the zipper foot looks like that I'm sewing with. You may need to ask for help in finding out, what zipper foot you need and how to put it on, but you'll have to change that at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and put the zipper foot on my machine. And for me, it just snaps right on. And you need to make sure it's on the right side so that you don't sew over the zipper. Okay, and then I'm just going to sew with a regular stitch over the line that I just basted. And I'm going to sew through the fabric and through the zipper fabric. Don't forget to back tack when you start and when you finish. It's also really important that you remember to change your stitch size back to a normal stitch size. You do not want a basting stitch anymore for this step. So I'm getting close to where I need to turn my stitch, so I'm going to stop and put the needle down, and I'm going to turn to sew over the zipper and put it back down, and I'm going to sew straight over following my basting stitch, and then I'm going to put the needle down again and turn it again, and I'm going to follow my basting stitch again back up through the fabric and the zipper fabric. It's okay if you don't sew a perfectly straight line because it's a little bit harder to sew a straight line with a zipper foot because you have a little bit more freedom. So this is just something that will become easier with practice. Try not to get too frustrated if it doesn't turn out perfect the first time. Okay, and this is what it looks like after I've sewn it. So this is what it should look like after you sew yours at home. If you were putting this in a shirt or a skirt, you would probably use a thread the same color as your fabric. So if you were making, say, a blue skirt, then you would use a blue thread to sew your zipper, and it wouldn't be as obvious. But for this video, I used a darker thread so that you could see it really well. Okay, time for you to catch up at home. Okay, this is the last step, and I always think this part is really fun because you get to reveal the zipper. So you need a seam ripper, and you're going to go in the middle of the seam that you sewed with a basting stitch earlier, and you're going to very carefully rip that basting stitch back out until you get to the bottom of the area that you sewed. You do not want to rip through the stitch that you sewed over the zipper with your regular stitch. You just want to rip out the big basting stitch that you sewed earlier. Okay, so here's my finished zipper, and I hope yours turned out similar to this at home, and if not, remember to just keep practicing and you will definitely get it eventually. And here's just a picture, a close-up of the zipper, the finished zipper. And that's the zipper open. Always remember to send images of your finished projects to submissions@kikimag.com. We love seeing your creations. And don't forget to keep checking back at kikimag.com for cool opportunities and awesome inspirations. Good luck on your project and have a great day.
The end.